The Mandalorian and Grogu trailer came out a little while ago, and this video isn't necessarily about the trailer, but more about the movie itself and the news surrounding the movie and kind of the reporting around it, because I think it's interesting just the way Disney and Lucasfilm are talking about the movie, and I think there's some things to talk about there. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the report that came out a little while back about the movie and about it having some pretty high stakes in terms of what was to come with the Mandoverse after this movie. And the report basically said if this movie doesn't do well at the box office, then we most likely won't get Dave Filoni's movie. Which, if you don't know, at least it's speculation, but there have been rumors out there that this movie that would come out at some point after Ahsoka season 2 was going to be this kind of heir to the Empire type of movie and kind of adapting those legend books in their own way, it seemed like. And so basically, this movie was going to involve Thrawn and the Mandoverse characters, likely meaning, Ahsoka, Mando, Boba Fett, and the supporting cast of characters in those shows as well, kind of teaming up to take down Thrawn. Now, I don't know how much of the books they would adapt, like including Luke in that, because, technically Luke would be around in the galaxy. But, anyways, that's what's riding on this Mando and Grogu movie. And to kind of tie into this, it was reported very recently also, I think either last week or the week before, that there are people within Disney and Lucasfilm that aren't very confident in this movie doing well and now have their doubts about it, essentially. And obviously, that's interesting because, why would you put this movie out if you weren't confident in it? Almost like they're kind of setting it up to fail. Now, The Mandalorian show was going to have a season 4, and because it's also been reported that Jon Favreau finished the script for season 4, and reportedly it's still separate from this movie. But I don't fully believe that. I think this movie has elements of what season 4 was going to be, and maybe there's this new script of season 4 that he now had to change to kind of replace the things that they took out to put in this movie. Now, what I think happened with this in terms of turning season 4 of Mando into a movie, I think some higher ups at Disney said we need a movie out, even though, there hadn't been one in 6 years since The Rise of Skywalker. And really the only thing going for them, besides something totally new, was The Mandalorian. I think that's probably garnered the most type of interest of any show that's been out. And if you want to make a movie about something, I think they decided to just put one out there because I don't feel like they wanted to do a whole new thing with a movie and have that thrown out there because, there wouldn't be too much hype surrounding it. And that's kind of why you're seeing Starfighter, which seems like a new story with new characters. And that's why you're seeing that out after the Mandalorian and Grogu movie next year. So it kind of seems like this Mando and Grogu movie was pushed out. I don't know that it was rushed out, but definitely pushed out from being a show or, a television series to a movie. I think the original plan was to have season 4 and then obviously Ahsoka season 2 and whatever other series they had in between and then have Dave's movie. I think somewhere in between that changed, and now we're getting this Mandalorian and Grogu movie. And not only are they not confident in the movie that it's going to do good, which again is crazy because why would you release it if you thought that? Obviously, this report that came out might not be true about these people at Disney and Lucasfilm not being confident in the movie. And, maybe it's not true. But assuming it is and kind of taking into account the other things that were coming out about the movie, which again, being that this movie has to do well for the Mandoverse characters to stick around, essentially, taking all that into account, obviously it's fair to assume it could be true. And also, I mean, this is probably the biggest sign that they aren't confident in the movie. The fact that they released this Super Bowl ad, and if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about. It was a 30-second ad, and a lot of people didn't like it because it really didn't feel like it did anything for the movie, and it didn't create any sort of hype toward the movie, in my opinion. And I think a lot of other people felt that way. And this isn't going to be a new take, but what they should have done is take the official trailer or, the best parts of the trailer that came out a little while ago, cut it up into the 30 seconds that you have for the Super Bowl ad or, however amount of time and throw that in there because thinking about how many people are watching the Super Bowl, and obviously, a lot of people would have seen it, and I think that definitely would have been a better idea. And so after the Super Bowl ad came out, they then had to explain why they released the ad, which probably made things worse and made them look worse. So all these things, the fact that there are reports that Disney and Lucasfilm are concerned about whether this movie is going to do good, the fact that there were reports coming out that the whole Mandoverse and Dave's movie that's supposed to come out after this and the kind of future of these characters hinges on this movie and the poor marketing, I mean, up to the point that the actual trailer came out, seems to support, point to bad things to come for this movie and whether it will do good at the box office and, word of mouth wise too, because Obviously, that's important. You want people to be talking about the movie, and of course, in a good way. But what they've done up to this point with it hasn't been ideal. Another and probably the most important thing I would say when it comes to Star Wars movies is the movie should have big spectacle. There should be high stakes. It shouldn't be the side characters or kind of supporting characters doing side missions that don't have huge stakes to the galaxy. And I mean, this is what it feels like is happening in the movie. Obviously, those are fine for TV shows. And the first season of The Mandalorian was essentially that. I mean, every episode was a different mission and they made it interesting, and that's what it should have been like. Now, obviously, you can only do so much. I don't think it would have lasted forever, but they had the right idea in the first season and for some of the second season. But like I said, a Star Wars movie should feel like this huge event, big spectacle, high stakes. And if I'm judging this movie based on those things, the characters in this movie are not, they don't feel like the main characters of the Star Wars universe. They feel like these side characters, and it doesn't feel like there's high stakes. So you have those two things that aren't going for you for this movie. And this is kind of the same thing that Marvel was dealing with. They were making these movies with side characters essentially when those characters can lead in television series, TV series, but when it comes to the big screen, the movies, those should be big spectacle. And again, they were doing these movies with these side characters and what felt like side missions that didn't have this big spectacle, high stakes kind of feel to it, like much of the MCU did leading up to Endgame. And this movie kind of feels like that. There's no kind of overarching threat to the galaxy. At least they're not hinting at that yet. Obviously, there's 3 months until this movie comes out. There could be another trailer hinting at some major villain, maybe. But at this point in time, judging off what I see now, that's kind of how I feel about it. And obviously, I want this movie to do good. I just feel like they could have handled things a little bit better when it came to the movie and what they decided to make. I think there are other ideas they could have gone with. But again, obviously, I could be totally wrong. We'll see when this comes out in May. And, hopefully I am wrong. Maybe this movie will be really good. Um, obviously do great in the box office and all of that. But, again, just judging off what I've seen up to this point, that's kind of how I feel about it. And let me know what you think if you're seeing this. And that's it.